that Pokemon instead. But yeah, very, very well played. Not even losing a single Pokemon in that last set. So very well played to Dubious as they move on to the top 8, as we're going to jump directly into our next game. Two titans of the VGC scene, Marcofiero going up against Carson Confer here. As from Marcofiero's end, we have Qianpao Zamazenta lead into Miraidon Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, two excellent players with teams that are really comfortable for them. I think Carson also used a very similar team to this at NAIC, and Marcofiero, getting second place with a Calyrex Shadow Rider Zamazenta team. A lot of different pieces here, but we see Carson's familiarity with the Ditto, just going immediately for a switch in, copying Zamazenta's initial damage boost, as well as the follow-on one from the Dauntless Shield, getting up to +2. Huge advantage. I believe this Qianpao is Covert Cloak, not Focus Sash, so susceptible to a 1 at KO, and these Zamazenta could be in some big trouble. I'm not sure if Ditto is Terra Ghost or Terra Normal, but yeah, Terra Ghost excellent against the Zamazenta in some situations. Terra Normal really good against the opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider, so just really great options on this Ditto right now. Perfect switch in, while also getting Reflect up.
Yeah, Ditto actually being a defensive monster here, being behind Reflect, getting the 2 Dauntless Shield boost to put it at +2 defense. Unfortunately, the Grimmsnarl goes down. That's the Sword of Ruin difference right there for the Heavy Slam, but Ditto, perfect time to switch in here. We actually saw that Qianpao is Assault Vest, which is a very unique adaptation for this part of the format, but Ruination actually going to be doing a lot of good work here to get around that Zamazenta's defense boost, as the Terra Ghost, unfortunately not going to get you around Ruination, but is going to block the body press, allowing Ditto to stick on the field. This allows Calyrex Ice to get the Trick Room up as the Qianpao gets knocked out here. So pretty good position for Carson here if he's able to use Calyrex in a way that's able to potentially dance around these wide guards. But I mean, the sort of push and pull that you're using with wide guard is that you're kind of letting your Zamazenta not be very proactive here. But at the same time, Calyrex Shadow Rider can do a lot of work here, as it has 2 targets for Astral Barrage sitting in front of it.
Yeah, thankfully you can go for wide guard on Carson's. Both Pokemon are basically incentivized to go for their wide guards here, whereas Carson can go for Psychic and potentially bring down that Ditto in one hit. Calyrex is forced to go for a Leap Seed and kind of just try and slow play this match, which really isn't what you want to be doing. With Trick Room on the field, we see a Double Protect from Marco, just really trying to slow the pace of the game and stall out this Trick Room.
Yeah, just trying to get out of the Trick Room as fast as possible, just to set up his Calyrex for a winning position when it's not threatened in being the slowest Pokemon on the field here. So I imagine a pretty slow sort of game plan here to try and stall out the Trick Room, as we're going to see the dueling wide guards come out, as you mentioned. Leech Seed going to come into the Calyrex, the Psychic from Calyrex Shadow Rider able to pick up the knockout, and now with no protection from wide guard on the opposing side. But there is a Miraidon here. I believe this Miraidon, is this the Choice Scarf variant, I think, if I remember? Oh no, it's Assault Vest, so it will be indeed faster than Calyrex Shadow Rider in Trick Room. So despite getting the special attack boost, it's still facing quite a threatening combination of Pokemon here.
Absolutely. Electro Drift should be a pretty clean knockout into the Calyrex Shadow Rider. However, if Zamazenta is slower than the Miraidon, you're not really facing a lot of pressure from the Calyrex. You could just go for 2 body presses in Trick Room and KO that Miraidon, so that Calyrex Shadow Rider can kind of switch out and sweep the game later on. With Terrestrialization used on the Ditto earlier in the game, and Astral Barrage is going to do a lot of damage to that Calyrex if it goes off. So yeah, something to be watching out. We see Marco go for a Protect on the Calyrex, just trying to protect that. No read on Carson's side, and it is an extremely, or rather, with the Reflect up, the Miraidon's able to take that really exceptionally well. Not even doing a knockout, or not even doing over 50% on the Miraidon.
Yeah, what's awkward for Marco here is that you kind of wish you could keep the special attack boost here because of the Miraidon's Assault Vest, so I like the game plan of here trying to get as much damage into it as possible, because it is going to be the harder Pokemon to remove in the endgame. But with the extra Pokemon advantage from Marco's end, you'd have the ability to pivot out the Calyrex and preserve it to where it can come back in after Trick Room goes away. There might be an incentive. Oh, there's a Chi-Yu in the back. Okay, so if you're able to keep this Chi-Yu healthy, or at least on the board, I don't know if it's going to be able to take the combination of Glacial Lance plus another Electro Drift. So unfortunately, Chi-Yu is going to go down here. But now, with the Trick Room stalled out, you have the ability to bring in Calyrex Shadow Rider here. And you have some interesting targeting decisions to make here. If you want to try to prevent Trick Room, or if you want to try to maybe knock out this Miraidon to prevent it from knocking out one of your Pokemon.
Yeah, I didn't catch who between the Miraidon and the Zamazenta was faster, but it could actually be pretty important here. I think the Miraidon should live the Astral Barrage even with the Life Orb due to the Assault Vest. So if an Electro Drift is able to knock out the Zamazenta, it's going to be close, or at least bring it in range of the next Leech Seed. You might potentially have a way to find a way to beat the Calyrex, like a single target Glacial Lance might just knock out after you knock out the Zamazenta. Going to be pretty close, and we're going to see it is Terra Ghost Life Orb. Okay, that is... Oh no, Focus Ash, my bad. And yeah, the Zamazenta was faster than the Miraidon, so just falls a little bit short on the Calyrex, and yeah, that's just going to be a clean game, end game for Marco now.
Yeah, keeping the Terra Ghost in your back pocket for an endgame situation like this, incredibly pivotal for getting that amount of damage there. But Calyrex able to tank that Terra Ghost Astral Barrage, so potentially some good information for Carson going into the next game on how bulky this Calyrex can really be when it matters most. But yeah, really, really solid played end game from Marco there. And once again, in Carson's sets, unfortunately, I've been seeing Grimmsnarl kind of get the short end of the stick there. It's tried its best to set up the screens, but at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter. So maybe Carson tries to pivot away from Grimmsnarl, but in theory, it is a very important Pokemon for this matchup, despite how much pressure it can be under in certain situations. But yeah, back to the drawing board here, and we'll have to see how Carson is going to adjust to try and maybe capitalize more on that Trick Root mode to get himself in a better position to not have Calyrex Shadow Rider come in at the end of the game and do what it does best.
Yeah, I think the end of the game looked pretty convincing. You live the Glacial Lance and then it's just over. But I do think if Carson had earlier in the game, knock on for the Wide Guard, hits the Heavy Slam into the Calyrex in that turn, you probably do just have a winning endgame there. So it doesn't adjust too much, at least brings the Grimmsnarl and the Miraidon. I think, yeah, the Grimmsnarl, the Ruination on the Chien-Pao really ruined the Ditto's day in the previous match. Marco doesn't want to give up the Dauntless Shield boost to the Ditto especially easily, so it doesn't lead it, leads the Ogerpon, as we see Grimmsnarl go for a Thunder Wave, interestingly, as the Chien-Pao goes for a Ruination. Electro Drift going to be a clean knockout there, and we do see the Ibicudgel doubling up into the Grimmsnarl. Only gets a Thunder Wave for its trouble. We're going to see how valuable that is. Maybe that's just all you need for the Calyrex to be able to beat it. If it is a faster one and a slower Ogerpon, we'll see. But yeah, ultimately, once again, doesn't get a whole lot of value out of that Grimmsnarl, but you kind of expect a Restricted to be coming out of that slot, and so Carson just switches the Ditto in and takes the Calyrex Shadow Rider, says thank you, has a Focus Ash, so it's kind of safe this turn, even though it does not. It doesn't have Terra Normal, it has Terra Ghost on this set, but due to the Focus Ash, still in a pretty safe position, with the Miraidon threatening a Electro Drift, which would knock out the Calyrex Shadow Rider if the Ogerpon isn't able to go for Follow Me, and the Ditto having Astral Barrage on the field.
Yeah, I was almost going to say that was probably a much better situation for Grimmsnarl to be in, but unfortunately unable to take the double up of Ruination plus Ivy Cudgel. But both the Calyrex Shadow Riders just saying, I'm not going to play that Speed Tie Mind Game this turn, but delaying pretty much the inevitable here as the Miraidon and Ogerpon trade blows there. Which interestingly does put this Miraidon probably in Astral Barrage range. It might be close, but Marco not wanting to take that chance rips the Terra Ghost, does win the Speed Tie into the opposing Ditto, knocks it down to Focus Sash, but now Ditto gets to fire back an Astral Barrage of its own, gets some good damage, bring Calyrex Shadow down to its Focus Sash, but differently in this situation, not going to take a KO. So now Calyrex on one side has a boost, and now Carson having the forbidden restricted duo of two Calyrexes just riding different horses here. But Marco does have a positional edge here with that Zamazenta, just being able to click that Wide Guard into both these powerful spread move using Pokemon, as Carson once again possibly delaying the inevitable here, just clicking Double Protect to try and avoid the Speed Tie conundrum that they are potentially in this turn.
Yeah, kind of a weird spot where I think Carson was going for the Double Protect to try and bait out the Protect from Calyrex. Goes for it again, now going for the Double Protect basically, and lands the Leech Seed on the Zamazenta, which I think is actually pretty important. If you win the Speed Tie at this point, you might actually have a way to win this game. With the Ditto by going for a Psychic or Astral Barrage if you read no Wide Guard, but really not a huge reason to do that. But yeah, if Marco wins the Speed Tie here, just going to be a double knockout and an instant win. I think that was kind of an interesting situation that, okay, we do see the Ditto just straight up go for the Astral Barrage, going to be knocking out the Ogerpon and bringing the Zamazenta in Leech Seed range. If we see a Trick Room here, this game is instantly over. Oh my goodness. What a turnaround.
What a great turn there, honestly. Like, Marco getting punished a little bit for playing a bit defensively with the Calyrex, and Carson seeing right through that, able to set up the Trick Room, able to KO the Zamazenta. And I mean, yeah, it's so astronomically unlikely that you're going to be able to protect your way out of this. And Carson taking the second game of this set, and as we go to a game 3.
Yeah, I could kind of see what Marco was angling for with the Ogre Pawn switch out earlier in the game. If you can knock out the Ditto, you actually have a really interesting lock with Ogre Pawn Zamazenta, where with Wide Guard at Zamazenta on the field, the Ogre Pawn is actually immune to any damage that the Calyrex can apply to it. So as long as your Zamazenta has enough HP to let you just get through all the paralyses and Ivy cudgel the Calyrex a couple times, you probably should just win regardless. But Carson went for the bait on the double protect, didn't get it, and then was lucky enough to get the actual double protect statistically in the next turn, and was able to, with some aggressive play, close the game out. So yeah, really impressive. The Thunder Wave turn 1 from the Grimsnarl ended up being pretty inconsequential. I wonder if we see an adjustment, because that game was definitely a little bit too close for comfort for him there.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there in the endgame situation. It's like with Zamazenta threatening Wide Guard, it really begs the question of whether or not you're going to actually click Astral Barrage in that situation. So I can also see what Marco was trying to go for there, but that's just an example of this top level of play here. It's like when you're playing somebody of this caliber, both players, you have such a high profile matchup as this. You're just like, okay, like, are they going to predict me to predict me? Are they going to predict the prediction to the prediction? It's just like, there's so many layers to it, to where like these kinds of plays come out and you're just like, huh, why would they do that? And you're just like, oh, because they were trying to see this win condition from the other opponent and see if they either just don't see it or they don't go for it. So just a very interesting end game there coming from both of these players. And I agree with what you're saying there. It's like the drawing board is what both of these players are probably going to be going back to for this game. But no, as a matter of fact, they're just going to keep it with old reliable here. Maridon Grimsnarl once again going up against Chen Pao and Zamazenta.
Yep, potentially could go for another Thunder Wave, but honestly, to reflect against this kind of board seems really important. It'd be really nice if you could preserve the Grimsnarl somehow, but it does look like Marco is just content in every game to just double into the Grimsnarl, or at least apply enough pressure to be threatening and knock out every game. Heavy Slam we saw in the game 1 is a knockout even through Reflect with the Sword of Ruin on the board, and a faster Ice Spinner into the Maridon just threatens so much damage that you almost are forced to either switch out or go for a Trastalization to get a Volt Switch and knock out the Chen Pao. So definitely great offensive position for Marco here, but Carson, whatever move he clicks here, whether Reflect to aid him in this board state or Light Screen for later in the game, goes for neither, goes for Thunder Wave, and Ice Spinner doing a ton of damage to the Maridon.
Yeah, unfortunately Carson getting the paralysis there on the Zamazenta, but unfortunately losing terrain and also losing a majority of Maridon's HP there, so maybe possibly not quite getting the turn right. I was thinking potentially Grimsnarl might try to switch out and maybe go for a Ditto angle, expecting the Heavy Slam, but Marco potentially covering for that possibility and just trying to attack the Maridon, get rid of the terrain. Perhaps maybe accounting for the fact that the lack of terrain boost might have impacted the damage count into the Chen Pao with the Terra Electric Electro Drift. But yeah, with Grimsnarl still on the board here, it's able to get that screen up, and a Heavy Slam, as we saw with Sword of Ruin, did KO in game 1, not able to KO this game. So Grimsnarl able to hang on for maybe one more final screen here. So Carson finally getting probably mostly some good value out of Grimsnarl here, as he wants to preserve the Maridon for later in the game.
Yeah, we see the value of this Chen Pao when it isn't being knocked out in the first couple of turns. Is able to clean up the Grimsnarl to make sure there is no Light Screen. Leap Seed in the Zamazenta, but yeah, the Chen Pao has definitely done a good amount of work this match with an unconventional set of the Covert Cloak, Ice Shard, and Ruination. Really heads up play to be Ruinationing the Maridon, recognizing that Carson's probably not going to want to give that up for free, but finally has this Ditto on the field, ready to just knock out the Zamazenta or the Chen Pao. Another Ruination comes out from Chen Pao as the paralyzed Zamazenta protects, but now the Zamazenta is actually in a pretty good spot with being paralyzed, being guaranteed to be faster than Carson's Ditto.
That's if it is able to hit through paralysis. It's had a bit of a difficulty doing that this game, but yeah, it's definitely the paralysis actually helping it here in this Trick Room situation, but we're going to have to see if it's able to break through. Chen Pao actually is a very, very good Pokemon in this matchup, and you can see why potentially Carson was inclined to target it down earlier in the game, because Ruination doesn't care about screens. Ruination just takes away half your HP, no questions asked, and it's really putting a dent into Carson's HP here, so it's potentially putting Ditto in range of a body press KO. There is Terra still available, which does go into play right now here, trying to avoid the body press KO, but no wide guard allows Calyrex to get off an attack here, and Zamazenta once again not able to break through the paralysis, so the speed advantage from the paralysis not even mattering in this case. I mean, call it a commentator's curse, but Zamazenta, you really dropped the ball in this game, man. Like, I'm not gonna lie, 3 full paras. You had the potential to do great things in this game, but unfortunately, Marco getting some pretty unfortunate luck there and not able to break through with the Zamazenta there. And Carson finding himself once again in a pretty solid position here. Still has a couple turns of Reflect to work with, and Marco's got some big decisions to make on what he wants to bring out to try to outlast this Trick Room.
Yeah, pretty interesting spot there where if Carson's probably thinking, you know what, I should have just predicted the paralysis, I guess. I'd still have my Terra available on the Calyrex, which could be pretty valuable. We see the Ogre Pawn go for the Terra Rock, trying to threaten maximum damage, as we see no protects from from either side. We see the Ivy Cudgel and the Sucker Punch almost able to knock out the Zamazenta. The Ditto copied Zamazenta with Sword of Ruin, but unfortunately the Reflect doing a lion's share of the work there and allowing the Ditto to survive. At this point, you have Glacial Lance threatening a KO on the Ogre Pawn, Heavy Slam going to knock out the Calyrex. It's just a very good spot if Carson can navigate away from any double protects. If a double protect goes off on either or both, or really needs both, particularly the Calyrex, he could have a win, but unfortunately, no protect on the Calyrex. We see a double target into that, and Ogre Pawn only having single target attacks. It is just attack to close the game out for Carson, and we see a big turnaround from a pretty tough game 1. Carson able to win the game 2 in extremely narrow fashion, and game 3 a little bit more dominantly, with a bit of luck with this really excellent Ditto play.
Yeah, once again, I think this was a difference maker in some of the day 1 sets that we saw Carson playing in yesterday. The well-played Ditto actually ended up paying off massively in these sets, and it just goes to show why Carson's one of the best to do it. Takes down Marcofiero, who played an excellent game. Unfortunately, got some unfortunate rolls with paralysis there in the game. Basically renders Zamazenta almost useless. But yeah, Trick Room paying off here, and it's just it's just one of those days. Unfortunately, Pokemon is a game that does have a lot of luck involved with it, and sometimes you need those things to go your way. But I mean, all the credit to Carson to playing this game. It just goes to show when you get to play the game with 3 restricted Pokemon. I mean, how does that seem fair, right? Like, sometimes you get, with Ditto, you have the ability to copy 3 restricted. Sometimes you get 2 Calyrexes. I'm sure there's 100% of the player base that sometimes wish they could play with 2 Calyrexes. But yeah, Ditto being especially a good Pokemon against Zamazenta, being able to get a second Dauntless Shield boost, and basically be able to wall out almost opposing Chenpao and Zamazenta, especially with the Terra Ghost. So Carson will be moving on to top 8. In a very, very well-played set.
Yeah, the kind of match that you'll definitely see at the World Championship. 2 Worlds caliber players duking it out in this top 16 bracket.